I'd like to welcome you to Quail Hill, located at 21 Canyon Road, Ross, California. I'm Neil Ward with Compass Real Estate. This property is made up of 20 acres, high up on the ridge, secluded and private. It would be almost impossible to acquire anything close to this. The home itself is made up of 11,500 square feet. It's a hybrid of Japanese and contemporary architecture, 6 bedrooms, each with their own baths, formal dining room, formal living room, grand music room. The main entrance gallery is 150 feet long. All of the rooms look out and are surrounded by beautiful Japanese gardens. The home is currently on the market for $29 million. I'm standing here with Mark Pomeroy, who is the son of Mr. and Mrs. Pomeroy, who built this wonderful property.
So the story of this property is quite interesting. My father acquired it in 1969. It was 21 acres, and he had the desire to build a Japanese home, which was rather unusual 50 years ago. And he had a vision of a large space that could be used for family entertaining with multiple gardens. And it was very important to bring the exterior interior. Broke ground September 6, 1969, and completed October 9th, 1970. So it was a very quick build considering the amount of earth that was moved and the concrete that was poured. It was 1,700 cubic yards of concrete in the foundation. So it's not gonna go anywhere. It was important for the architect to have a contemporary chandelier in the space. So what we did to get the correct scale, my father and I actually bought chicken wire and actually made a mock-up scale to see what worked right. I think we did 3 versions, and this seemed to be the one that worked the most. Obviously, with the slate floor and a lot of the glass in the home, it was important to have a softening to this wall with its length and width. And so my mother was very interested in visiting the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, and a lot of the rooms were upholstered walls. So she actually brought out a team that had upholstered walls in some of the galleries, and they found this sort of chamois color velvet. And if you notice the detailing, the welting work, I think it took almost 3.5 weeks to upholster these walls, and they're all padded. They're very soft padding behind. And the thing that's remarkable, when you think this house is 52 years old and these walls are pristine, impeccable, have really not changed, just a slight fading where paintings have been hung. All the wall coverings in the house are original. They've never been touched.
We're now standing in the main living room to the house, and as you can see, it has beautiful 13-foot high ceilings, wonderful scale, wonderful volume, and then looking out to just the most serene, beautiful landscape imaginable.
You'll notice in the dining room, the living room, and the music room, the next room, is that they're clerestory windows. I call it a double roof system. And it was important for the architect to bring additional light in. There are also very deep eaves that go out, which keep the house very cool in the summertime. The scale is unusual for the era. In 1970, homes were really not quite this large, and with both the scale, and it was something very important to my parents. They wanted space. And this room will always be very special to me because this is where we'd have our Christmas tree that went up to the ceiling. And in the 1940s, my father was in Belgium and he bought glass ornaments that are the size of basketballs, and we had them hung in the tree, and we still have them, and it's a wonderful tradition. If you look at the railings here, my grandfather came to San Francisco in 1933 for a large contract to build the Golden Gate Bridge. So in homage to the bridge, my father decided to paint the railings international orange, which is the color of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Here we are in the formal dining room of the house. We just came across from the living room, and there has to be some wonderful stories that happened in here.
The dining room was designed to take advantage of this lovely courtyard garden, and the room across from here was my father's library, and there are shoji screens which would be pulled closed in the evening, and then the room backlit. So when you're sitting in here, you really had a very sense of being in a temple setting. in Japan. One thing that was interesting sourcing when the house was being built, there was a wonderful craftsman in San Francisco named Dirk van Erp. He was a wonderful metal worker. These escutcheons he designed, which are a copy of the imperial chrysanthemum, and these were pulls. Some of the closets. And my parents were very important for them to have storage everywhere. They wanted ease of access. All the silver, all the crystal, all the tableware, all the table linens were all here. The thing that's quite amazing, once again, is 52 years later, not a spot on any of this. It's just really quite extraordinary.
Adjacent to the formal dining room, we're in the central courtyard.
This is a very special garden, once again, because we have the dining room vistas, we have the music room vistas, we have the library vistas, all centered on this space. This garden was designed by Nagao Sakurai, who was the first graduate from the University of Tokyo in landscape architecture, and for 20 years he was chief custodian of the imperial gardens at the palace in Tokyo. So he came here and actually designed this garden. I think he spent about 3 or 4 days just contemplating the spaces. And he would recite haiku of what he envisioned and what the spirits were telling him about the garden. And the thing that I love about this garden, which you'll see as you move through the courtyards, is that these gardens have a 4-season cycle. Our family were always grillers and barbecuers, so barbecue is a very key element, but barbecues are not usually that attractive. So the architect said, well, why don't we build some type of very traditional Japanese structure over the barbecue? He came up with his design, which is a copy of a Shinto shrine. There are metal grates inside, hydraulic lifts that go up and down to lower the fire. There were gas jets to light the charcoal. We took barbecuing to the edge of limit. Was a great entertaining spot. We'd have cocktails out here. These poles were actually telephone poles. They couldn't find anything substantial enough for the posting, and they were taken to a lathe in Berkeley and shaped to this size. And then you notice that they all have copper ankle bracelets to prevent water damage. This actually was re-roofed probably 7 years ago. Wonderful Japanese artisan that did this by himself. He took all the old shingles off. He took the cross members off himself. All the nailings are copper nails. Very traditional. This is a traditional Shinto shrine, and we will treat it as such. This was originally the music room. My father played the organ, and he had a very, very large organ here. All the walls are upholstered in white linen and original linen. Linen allowed the sound to come out, and it gave it a very melodious, sort of soft tone to the organ music. I think an interesting note to this is if you look at the exterior of the house, it's white plaster and dark stain. We've brought that into this room with the white linen walls and the dark staining. So we've really brought the outside in. And I think it's a wonderful juxtaposition. And this was sort of the family gathering room. It was always my favorite room in the house. When the house was being designed, my parents did not like forced air heating. They didn't like the sound of air whooshing through spaces. So they instructed the architect to design the home with radiant heat. And radiant heat is oftentimes found only in floors. But the mechanical engineer said the actual home should have radiant heat in the ceilings because the sun, what does it do? It radiates down on you. It doesn't radiate up. So all of the ceilings have serpentine of copper piping throughout all the ceilings to radiate the heat down. In the main slate hallway and in all the bathrooms, they put the radiant heat in the floors as well, so it would warm up in cold mornings, and it's the cleanest heat possible.
After leaving the music room, walking down the hall, we're now entering the study library.
This was my father's study, and he would read if they had his books here. His built-in television and stereo, so he was very comfortable here, especially on Sunday afternoons watching football. This has a unique ceiling. It's a pitch ceiling. It's the only pitch ceiling in the house. All the paneling is very fine-grained oak. There's a guest room that's situated behind this room, so this could actually be a living area for the guest room as well, so it's very well thought out. Once again, to bring the Asian element, these are obviously shoji screens. They do open all out and close the room completely off. The surround is slate, once again, tying in the slate in the hallways and the exterior. Very sober mantelpiece. This was my father's favorite room. So this is the epicenter of the house. Who would not want a bar in the 60s? This bar has so much activity, great fun spots, center of the house, wonderful cocktails are made here, and once again, the original wallpaper. The bar had many more glasses and a lot more alcohol, but it's still a fun place to be.
Now we're walking into the primary suite, and as with the rest of the home, every aspect of this property was incredibly well thought out. We're now back to the back of the home where it's quiet, private. You feel like you're in a forest here with views up to Mount Tam, down to the city of San Francisco.
So this was my parents' bedroom, and the design was they wanted it to be a treehouse. And actually this floor plan juts out and it's built on very high pilings. So they really were in the trees, which was very important. This was very tranquil with the private entry hall, that this was their domain, away from the children's rooms. Lovely walk-in closet for my mother and lots of built-ins. My mother in her later years would spend most of her day in this room and just loved the light and the views to the mountains.
On the other side of the house, separate and private, are the 4 guest bedrooms. Each of the guest bedrooms has its own walk-in closet and own bath.
I have identical twin sisters, and my parents built identical rooms for them where they shared a Jack and Jill bathroom. It speaks so much to the symmetry of the home. The home was built on function. Everything is located where it should be. There's no unnecessary movement. Everything is where it should be when it should be. As you can see, all these rooms have either courtyard garden views or mountain views, and also borrowed space. I'm borrowing this space from that room, and I'm borrowing this space from that room. That was very key to the whole design of this house. Coming back down the hallway, now we're going to go into my room, which I think is the best one. Original draperies from 1970. The colors are pretty wild, but that was back in the 70s. My dressing room, you'll notice the walls are blue and white stripe. Once again, 1970 originals, and still look as white as it was the day they were put up.
All of the guest bedrooms have doors that open up to the outside and look from one room into the next.
It's very open but very private, which is, I think, quite unique.
Let's move on down the hallway to the wonderful symmetry to both of these gardens.
So these 2 gardens are quite interesting. So this is a dry riverbed, and as it passes under this glass bridge, it is suddenly transformed into actual running water, and it cascades over these rocks and then down into 2 ponds below this exterior bridge. So it was a wonderful sort of transition from the public to the private, and this glass bridge really allows you to take in so many wonderful vistas. Sound and light is an important element of this house. From every area you hear sounds, whether it be a mourning dove up in the eaves, giving a call in the late afternoon, or the sound of water. This door, when my parents lived here, was open all year long. It's something that I will have in my head forever. It's something very deep, and it ties into the whole Japanese mentality of resourcing water and life and the cycle of life. So let's go outside. All of these oaks have been trimmed. We have an arborist that comes yearly. We also have a French arborist who trims all the maples and the pine trees. The Smithsonian had all the gardens photographed, and they actually are in their archives. It's very rare to have Japanese gardens today, because of the maintenance and also the design. They felt it was very important to record that for posterity, because so many gardens, unless they're public gardens, are no longer accessible or even Japanese gardens anymore. It was an honor, and I think the garden represents so much of the Japanese design taste and really a recognition of Sakurai, who is a masterful landscape architect. You'll notice the rafters, the detailing here. All this is original, it's never been restained. And I think something I like especially is the shadowing in this house. With all of the lines, you get tremendous shadowing and detailing and display on the bottoms of the walls. It's quite special. Against the home itself, there are copper downspouts, but the architect didn't want some massive piece of metal here. So the idea of just the chain, so the water will roll around the chain link into the pond. So it's an interesting artistic statement, but it also serves a wonderful purpose at the same time. So this was sort of the walkway from my parents' bedroom out to the pool. When we would have large parties, these windows would all open and people would flow out onto the terraces. And we also can drop down into this garden from here, some stepping stones to the basin there.
As we leave the terrace coming out to the pool area, the views, Mark, oh my goodness, everywhere. This is a very, very special place.
This was the first black bottom pool that was put in, and originally they said, oh, it should be aqua colored. My father said, no, we want it to be more like a pond or somewhere that's dark, and it ties in with the roof of the darkness. My father wanted to sort of acknowledge the name of the property or the siding that it was Quail Hill. So a wonderful calligrapher came up, and this is magnificent calligraphy. The symbol on the right means quail, and the symbol on the left means hill or mountain. And then on the left is a signature of the artist. One thing you may have noticed as we walk through the property or the home is minimal steps. When the home was designed, my mother was not initially 100% on board moving into a new home and leaving the home she loved so much. And she said, all right, Bob, there's one thing you have to agree to, no steps. So from the garage to my mother's bedroom, there's not one step. It just keeps that super zen feeling that there's no interruption. It's organic, but it's very, very designed. So it's interesting that you can be organic and super designed at the same time. So I think that's a very key element to this house.
Here we are at the front entrance to the home, and adjacent this beautiful sculpture, Mark.
This is a kasuga. In Japanese temples, it would be lit with a candle here. I think it's a very strong statement. My father wanted this statement at the front of the house to really give the sense that, yes, this is Japan, this is authentic Japan. Welcome to our home. I think one of the key elements, too, with this lovely white stucco wall, are these sculpted pine trees. All the trees were sourced from around California. The motif here are clouds. You can sense the idea of the clouds with the shapes here.
One of the many extraordinary features of the home, Mark, is this just magical special garden here that sets the tone as you come into the property.
It's very true, Neil. I think the thing that's interesting to it, it's when you compare this garden to the other courtyard gardens, this is the largest garden. And it's a garden that has wonderful change of season in it. You're going to this garden and, the door may be open towards the pool and you're looking out to the vistas. It's very serene, and you almost feel that you are crossing a bridge into a new world. And when the doors are wide open, it's just a very inviting space.
Mark, it's incredible to believe that we are minutes from the city, but yet when you're here, it's so quiet and private. We're up on this magical ridge looking out to vistas that are just extraordinarily special.
My father had the idea of building a Japanese home, as I perhaps mentioned. So he found this fantastic architect, Mitsuru Tada, who has remained very close to us and still comes out to see the property. And my father said, well, I would like a living room, a music room, 6 bedrooms, a guest room, and a study. So Mitsuru goes to his office and creates this watercolor. So if you actually look at this, and we're in the house, very similar. We have our garages here, we have our front entry hall here, we have the living room where we are now. This is the music room. We have the library and the guest room here. And then we have the private family wing here. So quite extraordinary that very little deviation from this original schematic. And there was no floor plan yet. He just did this on the top of his head, that this is basically the house today.
Mark, thank you so much for sharing such special moments throughout building of the house, your family, everything that's gone into this. Thank you so much.
Well, Neil, you're welcome. It was my pleasure to come. The home has meant a great deal to me for 50 years, and I love sharing stories about it because it has such a rich personality and so much character to it. And as I keep saying, integrity. So it was my pleasure, and I hope that the audience will enjoy a glimpse into Japan in California.
Thank you so much for joining us on the tour of Quail Hill, located at 21 Canyon Road, just minutes from San Francisco, right across the Golden Gate Bridge. Quail Hill represents such a unique opportunity to own something of such scale and grandeur that would almost never be available again on the market for $29 million. I'm Neil Ward with Compass Real Estate, San Francisco. Thank you so much.